Hello, 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 and welcome to Coffee with the Carter Man. I think this may be episode 10. We're going to have to check on that. But we got a lot to talk about. Incredible potpourri today. A one issue potpourri. You can almost guess what it is. And we're going to explore it for about 10 minutes or so. Then we're going straight into our super guest. It is a return engagement by popular demand for the gentleman who is actually the dean of on-air personalities in this country. Incredible history, incredible president, and when he can tell us his insights into what's going on in the news based on his track record of covering it for decades. We have the great Frank Luber with us again. So we're going to give a lot of time to that interview, and I'm not going to take a lot of time on the potpourri. Then, as you know, we finish up with predictions. I have a prediction for you, which you may not like, but I think it's going to be accurate. And already we're starting to see the signs of it. All right. So let's grab your coffee, grab your beverage, whatever it is, and let's do this thing. Huh? How sweet it is. Actually, that's primed instead of coffee. I like prime. It's kind of like our producer, Gary, says it's glorified Kool-Aid, which it is. It's good. It's good, and I like it, and it wets the whistle. So let's get into the potpourri. I told you a one-issue potpourri. I've been in politics a long time. Over 50 years, started out, as I've said, often with the committee to re-elect the president, worked with John Mitchell and all those, Chuck Colson, all those people. I have never seen politics worse than it is now. And if there is anything whatsoever that brings home the problem, it is this. Okay. Great New York Post headline, isn't it? That's the front cover. All right. The mismanagement. And on top of that, the vile behavior of the politicians, one in particular. And I don't know whether you're familiar. He's sleazy, but I don't know whether you're familiar with the word smarmy. Okay. This man defines smarmy. Here's the definition of it. And I've taken the liberty of putting his picture up next to it. Let me get my fingers out of the way there. All right. I want you to read that. Smarmy. Kevin, let me get it right here. Gavin, okay? Gavin Newsom defines smarmy. He is just slick and sleazy and transparently so. And just shit. This fire is his. It's his, okay? There he is with the fire-breathing dragon. Some of you will recognize it. Balrog from J.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, right? Fire breather. To him, it's a hand puppet. He is responsible for these fires, okay? His neglect, his failure on 1,000,001 fronts, the failure with the fire hydrant, the failure with the reservoirs, failure to clean the debris off the floors of the forest there after Trump told him, you got to do this, Gavin, you got to. He's responsible, and yet, like a politician, today's politics, he takes no responsibility. Gary, let's roll this interview where you really see Gavin at his most Newsom-esque, okay? Let's roll this thing. Watching, folks. Watch it. Shuck and jive. It's repulsive.
I want to know the answers. So I'm the governor of California. I want to know the answer. I've got that question. I can't tell you about how many people.
This guy.
What happened? My own team saying what happened. And I want to get the answers. And I'll be candid with you, I wasn't getting straight answers.
Yeah.
I watched the press conference. I met with some of those leaders. We had my team start talking to local leaders, saying what's going on. Our state.
And you weren't getting straight answers from
I was getting
leaders.
different answers.
How dare you?
When you start getting different answers, then I'm not getting the actual story. And they're assessing it. And I get that as well. You have to have a little bit of grace, back to the point. We're in this emergency environment and everything else. So I just want to determine the facts. But no one has any patience anymore. In this weaponized, back to the grievance of Trump, everyone else, there's immediacy. And lies travel the proverbial world, and it's hard to get the facts out there unless you have backing of those facts and you can communicate them soberly. And so that's what we're trying to achieve. As relates to this, but I have 10 other things we're doing concurrently as well. I mean, across the board on recovery, disaster assistance, getting the major disaster declaration. It may be the first one in U.S. history over a text with the White House within literally 36 hours.
Yeah, but
to get 100% reimbursement for folks out here. We've been working concurrently in all of these areas.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Are you as disgusted by that as I am? Unbelievable behavior. By the way, it's Josiah Rice's podcast. It's well worth watching. It's a darn good podcast. But there you have it. Have you ever seen a sleazier, smarmier performance than that? And by the way, Mr. Newsom, there is another use for axle grease other than rubbing it in your hair. Okay? The man from top to bottom is an awful person, And Biden's going to send him Biden says that the federal government will pay for it. Why should you out there, I know I have some people in Kansas, I know I have people in Oklahoma. Why should you pay for Gavin Newsom's refusal to prepare for a catastrophe and then failure to properly address it when it occurs? By the way, Gavin, here's a hint about water to put out fires. Instead of running out because you let reservoirs run dry, California has an 848-mile coastline. And the other side of that beach is a bunch of damn water. Okay? You can fill your water towers with it, not the freshwater towers, but a water tower doesn't cost that much to make. The trailer park where I have my vacation home, we have a huge water tower. So there were a million and one things he could have done, but he didn't do any of them. All right. Now, the one thing he is doing, by the way, isn't this lovely? Another New York Post article. Okay. He's looking for donations to help those hit by the fires. He caused. He's looking for donations, but he wants you to donate to his political PAC when then he will, in turn, give the money to those in need. Oh, yeah. You believe that smarmy character is not going to take his cut? Okay. And by the way, when you donate the money to his political PAC, so he can give it to those in need. Act Blue is where the money actually goes, which is the Democrat National Committee's fundraising arm, Act Blue. And Act Blue takes its 3.5%. Okay. And it's kind of like the mafia. We got to dip our beak in, okay, with greaseball there, making sure that goes to politics instead of those who need. So that's part of the problem. And I'm running out of time, so let me get to the rest of the problem. Here's the rest of the problem. I did an article on it. As some of you know, those of you who subscribe at constitutionalrightspac.com, okay, subscribe to the newsletter. Every morning you get a newsletter. Thank you, Gary. Constitutionalrightspac.com. The afternoon, you get a personal email from me, okay? Make sure you go subscribe so you can get this one today, okay? It's what I call I have a variety of them. I have, Coffee with the Carter Man email, Bottom Line email. This is the Inner Circle email, so you have to make sure to sign up for that. And those on front are they're the heads of the fire department there in Los Angeles. Look at those smiles there. We're doing a hell of a job. Look at the one on the right. They're so damn fat. Sweetheart, here's a hint. You want to lose weight, eat less and exercise more. And they're the ones that said, if you're too fat and there's a fire, don't expect us to carry you out. Well, not you, fatso. And here's another problem with them. They're only there because the article, I go to an article in my today's personal email to you. a Doug Casey article, Up in Smoke. It is one of the most shocking articles, and the whole article's there. So go to constitutionalrightspack.com and grab it. What they point out, this article is going to have you, as I say in the beginning here, are you ready to be livid? Are you ready to be so angry you could scream? In short, are you ready to be spitting mad? Here's why you're going to be, one of the reasons. Those three women, okay? Let me just briefly tell you about these three women. It's in the article. It's all in the article. They're all three DEI. Why are they there? Because they are LGBXYZ, whatever the hell it is. It's their lesbianism they were hired by. And you may say, Carter, that can't be so. Well, the chief, I think that's the one. I'm not sure which one of those three that is. She made it clear when they asked her when she got in what was most important to her. And it was DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not making sure fire hydrants work, not making sure the reservoirs were full, not making sure the department, the firemen were fully trained. It was number one is making sure we have equity. So she appoints the other two, and they're of course LBGTQXYZ, what the hell ever. And here's an interesting factor about them. None of the three has any experience fighting fires. None of them's ever been a firefighter. They have never been a firefighter. Christine, the chief, brings home $440,000 a year. Kristen Larson, the chief, takes home $440,000. Christine, kind of near. I like your name, sweetheart. It's kind of like mine. She brings home $400,000, and Jamie, she earns $340,000. I think that's the big fat one who evidently uses it all to buy food. What she ought to. Sweetheart Jamie, invest in an exercise program. Okay, it might help if you ever do fight a fire, which of course you won't, because you never have and you never will. But you're very highly paid, all because of DEI. But they didn't stop there. No, they were too. They couldn't work on making sure fire hydrants worked. Okay, or the electrical system to pump water worked. That didn't work either. Well, we were busy. We were busy with this. The damn fire hydrant doesn't work, but it's painted the right colors. Oh my God, that is so nice. I love it. Well, is there any water? Can we get water out of it? Well, no. Well, we'll send our fire engine then. The $1.7 million electric fire engine, which can go 2 hours. And look what's there. Oh my gosh. It may not run right. They had to send it back because they had a water leak, by the way. May not run right, but we got the colors on the side. I told you it would make you mad. That's where the priorities of the fire department are. We're in Los Angeles while the city burned. Those were their priorities, backed by, of course, Mayor Bass, because Mayor Bass, one of her major accomplishments she's announced is she signed a bill making sure that for June they could put the gay flag above every public building in Los Angeles. Now, see, there was a law in California against raising anything but the American flag and the state flag. So she changed that in order. She didn't take care of. She cut $40 million from the firefighters. Maybe it cost a lot to raise the flag above every city building. Folks, let me try and put this in perspective. Can we? You can't make DEI the priority over people's safety, over their survival. 104 dead now because of DEI in Los Angeles. And of course, Mayor Smarmy, who he didn't just not do anything to help them fight fires. he cut the budgets of the fire departments, and he cut the budgets of filling the reservoirs. Look it up. It's all in that article, by the way. It's all in that article. Now, let me say this. I don't care about these people's sexual preference. I don't care. That's their business. That's their damn business. We don't care, do we? Do you care? I know you don't. Right now you're going, I don't care. But what we do care is when it becomes the priority for an entire city that then catches on fire because that was a priority over the well-being of their own citizens. Let me suggest something. Sexual preference should not be on the side of the fire engines. It should not be on the fire hydrants. Look, we all have sexual preferences. Mick Jagger, I would suggest, has a sexual preference, but I haven't seen, and a lot of people like Mick's sexual preference, okay? I haven't seen that on flags flying over the state capitals. I haven't seen that flying at the White House like Biden flew the LBJ XYZ TQ flag. We got to put a stop to it, folks. We got to go to Constitutional Right Packs, join up, because we're getting the DEI task force. We're going to fight this thing to the death because it's causing the death of so many other people. All right. Wow. It was a diatribe. I know it was a diatribe, but I'm angry. I'm angry. That's why I wrote that personal email today. Make sure you go to Constitutional Rights Pack and sign up so you can read it. That article, breathtaking. And we're going to put a stop to it, okay? We're going to put a stop to it. And we're going to put a stop to my tirade right now as well, because we have more important things than my tirades. We have a gentleman who is absolutely America's newsman, okay? Frank Luber is, I cannot begin to tell you what an icon Frank Luber is in Baltimore, Maryland, okay? You think back to when Baltimore was a great city when I was a kid back in the 60s. Frank Luber is Baltimore. Yeah, I always say Frank Luber was old Baltimore when it was the most wonderful place you could live. We had the Colts, we had the Orioles, we had, everything you could ever want. We had safety, and we had beautiful stores downtown. We had everything. And at that time, when I turned on the radio, I heard Frank Luber on WCAO. Then on television, I saw Frank. Okay. He was 8 years as the 8 years of the 60s when I was a kid at WCAO, news director at WCAO. And he covered all the major stories. The Beatles. Okay. How many people do you know who interviewed the Beatles? Well, the gentleman we're about to talk to did. During the riots, the civil rights movement, he was there with Martin Luther King at the I Have a Dream rally. Those of you who remember the riots in Baltimore, so H. Rap Brown, some of you will remember that name. Frank was there for that. He covered every major event. And then he went on to be the top radio man, morning drive time at WCBM, which is the number one talk radio station in the whole Baltimore area, reaches out forever, ever and ever and ever. And so he offered his insights every morning into the news. And now we are lucky to get his insights now into today's news, every aspect of it, the burning of Los Angeles, the incoming administration, the hearings that are going on now. What Frank has to say, you can write down because it's going to be important and it's going to be incisive and insightful. So Frank Luber, welcome to Coffee with the Carter Man.
Thank you, Carter. Thank you very much. In fact, you're pumping up my ego, which is already too high to begin with. With number one, I should have had you as my agent years ago instead of spending a lot of money on an agent, a lawyer, because perhaps I would have taken a different route altogether. And who knows, where I would have ended up, but I'm sure it would have been with you as my agent. I would have probably been in a much better place.
Well, I'm glad you were where you were, because I was able to enjoy you for many, many, many decades. And because you're my friend, I still get to enjoy you. And I've told you before, I have a vacation home from West Virginia, the trailer park, glorified trailer park. A lot of folks there are from Baltimore because it's only, an hour and a half drive. And when I mention I know Frank Luber, I mean, it's like saying I know Batman or Superman personally or something. You know Frank Luber, Frank. Yeah. I know Frank Luber. So you are legendary, which is a hell of a thing to be able to say. I remember they asked Ringo Starr what he did, and he said not too long ago, and he said, my full-time job now is being a living legend. And so thank God that doesn't take up all your time, so you can be with us.
Well, you were talking before about the LA Fire Department and California in general, and about the DEI, how and the wokeness that's going on in a lot of our major states and cities across the country. It's just not the LA Fire Department. It's just not California. I mean, I was watching this morning the hearings on Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense, and the same thing is going on in our military. It's why we're having a problem with recruiting people in the military, because the accent today, the focus today, has been over the last 4 years since grumpy old Joe Biden got into office. The focus has been on DEI and wokeness.
That's it.
And that's just got to stop, because it's really tearing this country apart, tearing it down. My belief is that, like Pete Hegseth said today, that as far as the military is concerned, it should be based on merit and nothing more than merit. And everybody who gets into the military, or anybody who gets into the LA Fire Department, should have to abide by the same standards, pass the same standards, and as anybody else would, and not promote them because of some DEI or wokeness bullcrap.
Well, Frank, if you're in the trenches with someone in warfare, I don't think you really care whether they've made sure that he wants Tampax in the men's barracks. I think what you care about is whether they can hold their own when the enemy attacks. What do you think?
Exactly. I mean, you don't want somebody in there who basically was promoted because of their gender identity. You want somebody in there who has experience, who has passed the standards, whatever those standards might be, as far as the military is concerned or the LA Fire Department is concerned. You want somebody in there who is going to be a leader, take leadership into consideration more than anything else. These are the people that I would want to be in a foxhole with.
Well, exactly. And we're not even meeting our recruitment goals now. No. And in Russia, who Biden has made out to be the big enemy that we're going to have to go to war with, they exceed their recruitment goals on a monthly basis. They're averaging 30,000 a month volunteering to go to the front. That's what we're facing. Now, imagine, you're being attacked by those people who are well-trained, hardened fighters, and the guy next to you is a damn poofter who has no intention of fighting and is only there because of that. It's not that he is that, it's that he's only there because of that. He didn't measure up, but they put him in anyway because that was their main concern, which actually is what Milley had, am I right, as the main priority for our military.
Yep. Well, all this occurred under the current administration, the Joe Biden administration. I think, from what I've heard so far, is that since Trump won the election, and is going to be within the next week or so, he'll be
Yep.
sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. I think things are already changing. I think the idea that DEI and wokeness and what have you is going to permeate or continually in the under Trump. They have another thought coming, because already, from what I understand, the recruitment is starting to increase. People who actually quit the FBI and quit the Secret Service are now wanting to come back into those services. So all this depends. It all goes back to what I said earlier, and that is leadership. You have the proper leadership, everything follows as the result of that.
Exactly. And we have not had the proper leadership at any level in the Biden administration. You can't look at any one of his cabinet members and feel inspired by it. You have a Secretary of Education who made the top priority of the Department of Education putting perverts in the little girls' room and porno in the elementary school libraries, right?
Yep.
I mean, what was his name? Cardone or something?
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
What the hell kind of priorities are? You look over. How about how do you feel about the track record of our Secretary of Homeland Security, Frank?
You're talking about
Mayorkas.
Mayorkas,
The Cuban. The
Alejandro
Cuban.
Mayorkas. I don't know what his sexuality is, but all I know is he's been the worst person in that job since it came on board. I guess back after right after 2001, I guess, right?
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this guy should have been impeached a long time ago.
How about jailed? Okay. How about stuck in jail for treason? He is Director of Homeland Security, the Cuban-born
Right.
Alejandro Mayorkas. And folks, don't get on like, oh, Carter doesn't like Latinos. Here we go. I keep this so handy every episode.
I know where you're
my
going.
wife. There's Rachel. That looks exactly like her, by the way. Exactly. Gary will tell you, it's spitting image. And she is an American citizen. There we go. All right. But
that's
don't
terrific.
give me any crap, folks, about not liking Latinos. I don't like that Latino because I think it was his background and his bigotry, his DEI that made him open our borders 15 million, Frank. How do you feel about that? 15 million.
Yeah, 15 million, and that may be a low estimate too. They really don't know how many. And then you take into consideration too the 300,000 minors that probably had been trafficked in sexual activity, or perhaps being hired by companies that are looking for cheap labor. We're talking about 10, 11, 12-year-olds, young girls, young boys that we can't even account for. 300,000 of them, at least 300,000.
300,000 children. And, my wife knows young girls who have been raped by the coyotes on the way up here, and then tried to turn them into prostitutes. So you're right on target. You're right on target. 300,000, and they don't care. They don't care. That's what's shocking about it. And you say, well, how about if we got the FBI to start investigating it and rescuing some of these? But Frank, what's the FBI's priorities under?
Well, that's the problem. I mean, the FBI right now, as far as the hierarchy is concerned, just like almost any of the government agents, federal government agencies today, I don't have any trust in any of them. Now, since Trump has become the incoming president, I have a lot more confidence in where this country is going to be heading than I have over the past 4 years. I mean, I actually, to be honest with you, I even had more confidence under Barack Obama when he was in there, and Bill Clinton, and both of them are Democrats, than I had with Joe Biden. Because the truth of the matter is, I don't know who was running the federal government. It certainly wasn't Joe Biden.
No, no, it certainly wasn't Joe Biden, who really cannot put two sentences together and has not been able to put two sentences together since he got into office. You have an FBI that, now you're Catholic, right?
Yes.
You're Catholic. So you were investigated by Christopher Wray as a domestic terrorist, Frank.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I'm probably on their list.
Yeah, because you are devout Catholic. And they felt like devout Catholics, they said, were dangerous domestic terrorists. And when Christopher Wray was asked about it, he said, "Oh, that was a memo that never went out." No, it turned out that was a lie. It was the official operating procedure to monitor people like you, Frank. How do you feel about that?
Well, I was just going to mention something else here about Catholicism, and that is, I can only imagine what they're going to do. When I say they, I'm talking about those who lost the election, the Democrats in general, what they're going to be doing as far as J.D. Vance is concerned, because he's a Catholic. I mean, he's probably right in there. He's probably a target already for them.
That's right. J.D. Vance is a Catholic. I forgot about that. And his wife, I think, is a Hindu or something, right?
Indian, I think so. Yes, she's Indian.
I think so. So he may have the double whammy as far as our FBI is concerned.
But you were getting you started off this whole conversation here about the Slickmeister out in California, the governor Gavin Newsom.
Disgusting.
I mean, he's an easy target for me and for you and for others, to complain about, and rightfully so. I'm not trying to absolve him of anything, but what I'm concerned about are the people who vote these types of individuals into office. They're the ones that I'm concerned about. How can so many millions of people in the great state of California be so misled? I mean, are they just voting Democrat because there's a D next to the person's name? Or are they really looking into the person himself or herself as to whether or not the person meets the standards that we talked about earlier, whether or not he has the merits, to be governor of the state of California? I mean, this guy, I had a laugh when you were talking about the axle grease or whatever it is that puts in his hair.
Horrible.
I mean, he just looks slick to begin with. Somebody that, I mean, the body language alone. Have you noticed when he talks now, he's going like this, like this?
Yeah.
It's like a rhythm, I don't know. But I blame the people who vote these characters into office to begin with.
Well, what do you, you're right. Let's think about that for a second. What is the thought process when you look at this man he exudes smarminess and sleaziness, and every one of his policies is based entirely upon DEI and wokeness. And then they not only elect him, they re-elect him.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just feel like turning to him and saying, you know what? You got what you deserved. That's what you voted on. It's like earlier today, my wife was laughing about the president of Venezuela, right? And saying, you think they ever get rid of him? And I said, no, they voted him back in.
Yeah.
And I said, and don't forget, when Venezuela was the richest country, and this goes back to California was a pretty good country when they first voted greasy, sleazy Newsom in. But when they voted Chavez in, it was a capitalistic country, Venezuela, and it was a country that was wealthy and was exporting oil. And I said, Princess, you need to remember, Chavez never said, I'm a capitalist. He said, I'm a Marxist, vote for me. So they chose him. That's pretty much the same with this guy, Gavin Newsom. He
Yeah.
has made it clear what he is, and they keep voting him in. So there you go, folks. You voted yourself an inferno.
Well, he makes Gavin Newsom makes Jerry Brown look like he's Ronald Reagan.
Yes.
Comparably speaking,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And how about Bass, the mayor of San Francisco?
Oh, there's another one. I'm sure that when people voted for her, they looked at her her gender, her color, the color of her skin, and what have you, which shouldn't have come into consideration at all. I mean, really, again, I go back to meeting the standards and whether or not you merit the position that you're running for to begin with. I don't know that much about Bass except for what I've seen over the last year and a half or 2 years. But she's the wrong person for the right job.
Yeah.
Same way with Newsom, is the wrong person for the right job. California is such a wonderful state when you look about it, and it's a shame because most of your liberalism, from what I understand, is in the southern portion of California, not the northern portion. When Trump was talking about, and I don't know if he was kidding or what, about Canada being the 51st state, perhaps what we ought to look at first of all is to split up California and make that 2 states. The southern part can be all the home of all the liberals out there, and the northern part, the conservatives.
I like that. And I would name the southern part Larry David land, because I got to be honest with you. That's all I think of when I think of Los Angeles. Larry David. I think everything about that place reflects Larry David. If you ever watch what Curb Your Enthusiasm, he is one of the most odious, selfish, I think very funny, but just appalling human beings on the face of the earth. And you can be sure that he campaigned for Gavin Newsom. I mean, and that to me, he is representative of those people. So yeah, cut them off, give them their own country.
You know who I'm beginning to admire more and more? And I thought I'd never, ever, ever even think about this, much less profess an admiration for this guy. And that is this Senator Fetterman of Pennsylvania. And I say that because it seems to me that if you're a Democrat today, you've got to be lockstep with all the other Democrats. Because let's face it, the Democrat Party today has been hijacked by Marxists, socialists, and I would dare say even in some cases maybe communists as well. The Democrat Party, I didn't leave the Democrat Party. I was a Democrat for 50 plus years or whatever it was. I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me. And that's basically what I think a lot of people ought to take a look at who are still Democrats and say, wait a minute, is this what I bargained for by being a member of the Democrat Party? Or is there something more to it than what I'm believing in? And I go back to why I like Fetterman, because at least he's looking at it from a different perspective, I guess you would call it.
Yeah. Fetterman is I knew you were going to say Fetterman as soon as you started talking about somebody who surprised us. I mean, when he ran for that office, he couldn't put 2 sentences together to begin with. No. And you just thought this guy's going to be a walking disaster. But from a political standpoint, he's been pretty darn good and doesn't seem to have any desire whatsoever to kowtow to Chuck Schumer and the radical left that controls
Yeah.
that party.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't need them.
Even he went down to Mar-a-Lago and
I would.
wore a shirt and tie.
That's right. He wore a shirt and tie. Amazing about the guy. Somebody's got to tell him, okay, if you learn to wear a shirt and tie, now find one that fits, right? But in terms of his policies, let's look at one of them in particular. He is the only Democrat who is standing by Israel. The only one.
Yeah.
And he's been unashamed about it. He's actually, in the face of the rioters, waved the Israeli flag.
Yeah, I would just ask Democrats in general who vote Democrat all the time, is this the same Democrat Party today that it was when you were a kid, when your parents were alive, when your grandparents were alive? And my answer would be no, it's not the same. It has been hijacked. And to be honest with you, the way the Democrat Party is going right now, I really believe that. In fact, I encourage the Democrat Party to continue the course that they're taking right now, because if they continue that route and go down that road that they're going right now, to more socialism, to more, as I said before, even communism, Marxism, whatever you might want to call it, if they continue down that road, I think basically you're going to see the end of the Democrat Party. And so in my estimation, I would encourage them to continue on because they're looking foolish.
I love it. I think you're exactly right. And what's amazing to me, if you, other than James Carville, who was always entertaining, if you listen to the Democrats, they really do not think they did anything wrong in this past presidential election, Frank. They think the American people are stupid and racist and genderist, and that it's the American people that are wrong, right?
Yeah, they did nothing wrong as far as the election results were concerned. And you can say the same thing about Gavin Newsom. He's not going to admit that he goofed up. I mean, he had an opportunity for all these years. Back when Trump was president, he had an opportunity, because Trump even told him, he said, you got to clean up the brush, in these forests and what have you, because it's like a tinderbox. You've got to put more investment into the reservoirs. You're going to have more water available, to fight these fires. You're going to have more equipment and what have you. Now you have Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass and other Democrats out there basically saying what we need right now is a Marshall Plan to rebuild Southern California. And a Marshall Plan that's going to cost billions and billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars, probably trillions before it's all over and done with. So it's very easy for these Democrats to look at the federal government as though they represent monies that are theirs, as opposed to monies that are really ours as taxpayers. Because it's easy for a Democrat to go out there and say, oh, look, we got the federal government's going to bail us out. And that's what he's looking for right now, the federal government to bail California out. Why should we bail him? Why should we be bailing any state, for that matter, for the mismanagement that goes on? Why should all of us as taxpayers be responsible for that?
Well, Frank, you nailed it. Why should you in Maryland, me in Pennsylvania, and our viewers all across this country, why in the hell should any of us be responsible for the mistakes made by the people of California? They did it. They did it. They're the ones who elected Gavin Newsom and Bass, and they're the ones who re-voted him into office, and they're the ones who sat there while the reservoirs were draining and becoming empty and watching the water wash into the ocean, and didn't stand up and say, wait a second, we got to have water. I'm sorry, no sympathy. No, especially not the wealthy ones. Especially,
Yeah.
Paris Hilton's home burned up. And what we're being told now is, Frank Carter, we need you to chip in some money to rebuild Paris Hilton's home. Hell with Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the other thing is the insurance rates obviously are going to go sky high out there, but not just there, because a lot of these insurance companies that insure people out in California are also insuring people here on the East Coast as well.
Yep.
Well, guess who's going to be paying for those high insurance payouts? It's going to be not only the California people, but the people in Pennsylvania, where you are, and in Maryland, where I am.
It's appalling. We shouldn't spend one more cent on it. And let's touch on something that Gavin Newsom said in his, I'm sure you saw when he was on the video talking to Biden in the Oval Office. I'm sure you saw that footage, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he said, which made me want to jump up and strangle that little greasy haired SOB, was he wanted, if you recall, his whole pitch was he wanted Biden to clamp down on the social media in order to censor you and me. So we won't say things he didn't like about what he did in California. Actually called for that, right?
Yeah. Censorship. That's what
Censorship.
we're talking about. And again, I always thought the Democrats were supposed to be very liberal when it came to a lot of these things. Like they were against censorship at one time. Now today, they're the ones who are obstructing people's right to be able to speak. I mean, it's a complete reversal of where the Democrats were maybe even 20 years ago. It's gotten so bad, and that's why I can no longer call them basically liberals. I'm calling them for what they are. They're socialists, Marxists, and in some cases, communists.
Well, you nailed it. You nailed it. And in his diatribe, calling upon Biden, who probably didn't understand a damn word he said anyway, when he's called upon Biden for censorship, if you recall, he said, and this jumped out at me, and I wanted to see if it galls you as much as it did me. He said, I'm asking this as a point of personal privilege. All right. That is from Robert's Rules of Order, right? And that governs legislative debate. And it's used during a legislative debate when you're supposed to say something that is essentially not germane to the issue being debated. But wasn't that just so absolutely reflective of the politician's mind that he, as a politician, wanted a point of special privilege? That's the whole damn problem with this country now. Every politician is specially privileged. Am I right?
Every politician, not only specially privileged, but I think they're basically in the back pocket of a lot of people with a lot of money. And who knows how much money is going into their pockets as well. I'm talking about the politicians. This is why I from the very beginning, when Trump first came down the escalator, that I was for Trump to begin with, because to me, he was refreshing. He was not a politician. He had to play politics, obviously. He donated monies to both Republicans, Democrats, what you had to do as a businessman in New York. He had to deal with all kinds of obstacles in New York. The mafia had to deal with them as well.
Yep.
But it was refreshing to see somebody come along who was not a lifelong politician. This guy, Gavin Newsom, getting back to him again, you can tell basically that he's had a very cushioned lifestyle all these years that he's been on this earth, and who's paying for it? Basically, it's not him. I mean, he's not doing anything that's benefiting the people. If anything, he's costing the people. He's costing lives. He's got blood on his hands in this case
Yep.
out in California.
Blood on his hands and special privilege. His
Special
whole
privilege,
life has
right?
been a point of special privilege, just as he said in that diatribe. And I
Yeah.
think the American people are sick of it, Frank.
I think so too, and this is why I believe that Trump uh, won in a outstanding, response by the American people because he won. He not only won the electoral vote by a handsome majority, but he also won the popular vote as well. So the Democrats couldn't say this time, well, he lost the popular vote, and we really shouldn't. We should get rid of the electoral college and what have you. Well, he had an answer for that. He ended up, getting the popular vote, the electoral vote by landslides, and also won the 7 major battleground states. I think,
That's
if I'm
right.
not mistaken, one of my predictions was that he would win 6 of them when we were on the last time we were on together.
Yep,
I
you're
mentioned
right.
about 6 of them. I was going to, I thought, well, he might lose Michigan. Well, he ended up winning all 7. So
That's
there
right.
you go. Trifecta.
He crushed the blue wall. You are exactly right. He crushed the blue wall. One last question, just on something that, as I read your bio, and one of the people I've always wondered about that I think you interviewed, and it says in your bio, way back in the '60s, H. Rap Brown. Okay, you interviewed him back when he was leading the Baltimore riots? Am I right?
I never had a personal interview with H. Rap Brown. I met him in Cambridge, Maryland, when he was down there, basically getting the blacks in Cambridge, to take to the streets and what have you. But I never had a personal interview with him. But I had sound bites by him and what have you that I was able to gather, but not a personal sit down interview with him.
But you were much closer to him than the rest of us, where you saw him in
Oh
action.
yeah,
You
I
reviewed
mean
his
he was a
behavior.
rebel rouser. I mean, yeah, he was bad news. There's no
He
question about
was
that.
and if you recall, Stokely Carmichael. There were a bunch of them back in the day when you were a leading newsman, and you wonder whatever became of them. I think H. Rap Brown just turned into a common criminal in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. But you wonder, were there, from what you saw up close and personal, were their hearts in the right place, or they just purely wanted to cause us bad?
uh, I think, well, I think that Martin Luther King's heart was in the right place. Um, Stokely Carmichael's Student Nonviolent Committee, Coordinating Committee, I can't really say that his heart was in the right place. He might have been an opportunist, which a lot of these people are. We have them today. Al Sharpton, right? A good
Horrible,
example, an opportunist,
horrible
right?
person.
Is his heart in the right place?
No,
No. His his heart is wherever the money is.
his heart is wherever the money is. Well said. And
Yes.
I'm afraid you've probably summed it up for a lot of those. You mentioned your prediction, and now it's time. We're right on the clock here, where it's time to go to our predictions for now. Predictions for the coming week. All right, predictions for the coming week and in the several weeks ahead, and let's say even months ahead, as the Trump administration takes its place and begins to hopefully enact its policies. So let's do our predictions. Gary, come on in if you're there. Sam, and I'll start out. And my prediction is that people are going to be very disappointed in the backtracking that's going to be done by Trump appointees. I think we're starting to see it now. We see Tulsi Gabbard, who I just love, suddenly has come out and said, well, maybe warrantless searches are necessary. No, just because you want to get in office doesn't make them necessary. I think we're seeing some of these people who we thought were going to be for peace over in the Ukraine are suddenly talking about putting peacekeeping NATO forces in Ukraine. I don't think you can make a worse proposal to Putin than that. So my prediction is we are in for a lot of backtracking disappointments over the next weeks and months. So what's your prediction, Frank?
I almost am going to basically predict the opposite. I think that Trump is going to win out as far as his nominations are concerned, including Pete Hegseth. I think he'll end up being the Secretary of Defense. I was very impressed with him watching him this morning. And the way I look at it, as far as some of these nominees are concerned, but particularly Pete Hegseth, we're not looking for or trying to nominate a pastor or a minister. We're looking at somebody who's going to be leading our military.
Yeah.
In the future, leading the Pentagon. And so I predict that Pete, I may be going out on a limb on this, but because he's getting a lot of backlash, but I'm going to predict that Pete Hegseth is going to be our next Secretary of Defense.
All right. I like it. I like it. Sam, we'll go to you and then we'll finish up with Gary. Sam, what's your prediction?
Yeah, kind of like the backtracking you were talking about. I'm having worries about that too as the day gets closer. So hopefully that won't be the case, but like promising a lot and then doing very little when the actual term starts.
All right. Very good. Gary, finish up for us on predictions.
A couple $100 billion before Biden leaves to California to house the homeless, because we all know about once a year they embezzle 20-40 billion for housing of the homeless, and now they have the perfect opportunity to get hundreds of billions to do it. Interesting to me that they never house the homeless, and it's just becoming more and more of an issue out there. But every single year I saw an article a couple years ago, a small bathroom at a public park. This was like a 12 by 12 structure. $50-some billion for a 12 by 12 block building with a toilet in it.
Yeah.
And it's always federal money. It's never California's money. It's always our money.
Yes.
And I expect to see a lot of that literally before 6 days from now. You're going to see at least 2 or 3 different pieces of legislation that Biden's going to proudly sign. It'll be the talk of the media, and California will embezzle a couple $100 billion before they get their guy out of there. That's what I expect. That's my prediction.
All right. I'm afraid that prediction may be absolutely come true. All right, folks, that's it. We are out of time. The clock has ticked down. It has been fantastic. Frank, thank you so much. As usual, you are superb. And hopefully you'll be back in another month or so, because I know people love listening to you and watching you.
Well, thank you. You're my agent.
There we go. All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us. It has been a pleasure. Let's get out there and fight the good fight. Let's do this thing.